We are honored to have Dr. Jitendra Singh, Union Minister of State with independent charge of the Ministries of Science and Technology as well as the Earth Sciences. Sir is also the Minister of State in the Prime Minister's Office, Ministry of Personnel, Public Grievances and Pensions, and the Departments of Atomic Energy and Space. Dr. Jitendra Singh is a diabetes specialist of international repute, having earned a master's degree in medicine and a fellowship in diabetes from AIIMS, New Delhi. As a Minister of Science and Technology, Sir launched India's first indigenously made research vessel named Sindhu Sadhana in 2014 from Goa. During his ministership, the 4th Indian Regional Navigation Satellite System was launched by ISRO in April 2015. I request Dr. Jitendra Sir to inspire and motivate the young minds and healing hands of tomorrow.
Dean Colleges, Professor Balram Pani, Chairman Governing Body, Professor Mahesh Verma, Principal Professor Dheeraj Shah, Director GTB Hospital, Professor Vinod Kumar, members of the faculty, and above all, my dear friend, Professor S.V. Madhu, who was actually my first introduction to UCMC, maybe about 3 decades back, and who's also been pursuing me to block this date today to be here. And a very self-effacing person, I must say. He's one of the very precious members of our endocrine and diabetes fraternity, and the latest work being the effect of yoga in preventing the occurrence of diabetes mellitus. Because earlier on we had studies. I think the first one came from maybe Hyderabad, Usmania College, way back in late 90s, where they had postulated that you could reduce the dosage of insulin and anti-diabetic drugs with the practice of certain yoga asanas like Mayurasana, Bhujangasana, etc., etc. But this is the first of its kind where you have actually postulated the curtailment of the preponderance in the more vulnerable, susceptible subjects, and the studies under the observation of the Ministry of Health. At the outset, I have to thank the principal and the management for making me a part of this 54th Foundation Day and Convocation. And most of all, I ought to congratulate and take a deep pleasure in congratulating the young medicos who are receiving their degrees, also their awards, and I know how much it means to you. In fact, for those of us sitting on the dais, is one of the many occasions, the many functions that we keep attending day in and day out. For you, it's once in a lifetime, because you will not be coming here for another degree again, either in undergraduation or post-graduation. And I can also understand the value of it when I realized that when I received my undergraduation degree, I could not attend the convocation because by that time I had already joined as a resident elsewhere. So at that point in time, I did not feel it worth, traveling all the way to collect a degree, and it was sent to me by post. So I missed out that opportunity. And of course, then I made it a point to attend the convocation of my postgraduate degree, also the MNA, MS. But those days, the photographs were far and few between, so I don't know where is the photograph. For a few years, I did have one of the photographs, but now I'm not able to track it. So you can understand, with all these cameras around, and once in a lifetime occasion, I think for you all, guys sitting there, it means more than it means to any one of us. And in the last 11 years, as a part of the government headed by Prime Minister Modi, the healthcare focus has been rather, I would say, twofold. On the one hand, if I was to sum it up in my words, I would say 3 A's: accessible, affordable, and available healthcare. And because you are the medicos who are going to actually orient yourself to the current landscape, which was possibly not available when we were practicing, or when we started our practice, or when we came out of the portals of the medical institutes. I think it was this government which came out with a beautiful concept like Ayushman Bharat. Dr. Vinod Paul would be joining us very shortly, who was also part of the team. And being all of us there in the practice for almost 3 decades or more, I think this is one of the best health insurance schemes across the world, because there are so many health insurance schemes that have been there around for so many decades, but none of them insured a person for a pre-existing disease. This is the one disease. Today you are detected as having a malignancy or a type 2 diabetes mellitus. Tomorrow you go, get yourself insured and get all the funding for that, which never happened earlier. Even in fact, in our practice, we found if one of the patients suddenly had an acute myocardial infarction and went for a claim, the insurance company would try its best to prove that he had an underlying coronary disease which was camouflaged in order to deny him the benefits. So this is one of the, I think, best models that has been created by the Modi government. And then the Jan Aushadhi Kendra, the other day I was there, one of them at the AIMS, and a lady told me that earlier on when she came to purchase her medicine, she purchased for a week. Now she purchases for 1 full month because the cost is same. So her budget adjusts. So I think these are some of the initiatives taken by this government, Prime Minister Modi, Health Minister Mr. Nadda, which have been done with extreme degree of innovative thinking as well as extreme sensitivity, placing oneself in the place of the patient who is to be benefited. And then the wellness centers, the concept of wholesome health, which of course even the entire world began to realize during the COVID days. In the middle of night, I would receive calls from many of my contemporaries who had gone and settled down as NRIs in America. So in the middle of night, they would call me and ask me, is there some immunity booster in homeopathy? Because when faced with the threat of death, they would realize that. And all their life, they had been cynic about Oriental systems of medicine. And therefore, and now of course, we have sickle cell programs like TB Mukt Bharat, Skill Cell. So that is one aspect. And the other aspect is same way, making a medical education affordable and accessible. With so many medical colleges. Today we have almost 25 AIMS, and the undergraduate seats were just about 45,000 10 years back, are now in lakhs, almost close to 1.5 lakh. And therefore, because coming from a semi-urban background, I have known of families where some of the girls would get the call letter for an admission in medical college, but their parents would not send because the place was very far off. Communication options were not like as it is today. So where would she go? Which was the hostel she would stay? PG concept did not exist at that time. And that, I think, has now democratized the opportunity. So I'm glad that now the anchor ma'am was mentioning about the achievements of our ministry in space and I think in maybe meteorology. But more important than that, our achievements have been in the area of medical science and life sciences. For example, it is this Department of Biotechnology under the Ministry of Science and Technology, which has come out with the world's first ever DNA vaccine for COVID. And also the rest of the vaccines, the HPV vaccine, which is said to have some role in the prevention of cervical cancer, which is very prevalent among young females in India. And today, overall, we are supplying our indigenous vaccine to as many as about 200 countries across the world. So we are living up to the concept of Atmanirbhar Bharat. We are living up to the concept of Make in India. We are also living up to the concept of Vishwabandhu Bharat, creating in India for the rest of the world. And I think as medicos, all of you should realize the importance of it because you belong to a different generation. That India was never taken seriously as a healthcare provider. Whenever we went to conferences abroad, we were not taken seriously as, very great protagonists of healthcare. And preventive healthcare, of course, was not out of question. Because here, we had that practice. If somebody fell sick for 4 days, they would try all the home remedies, some rituals, some religious rituals, partly other rituals. Then finally, when the things would worsen, they go to a hospital. The same country, which was still yesterday not taken seriously as a therapeutic healthcare provider, is today being hailed as a leader in preventive healthcare. So I think that's a huge, huge 360 turnover. And which has changed India's perception across the world. And we are talking of moving to rank 1. This is what is going to actually contribute. Very recently, we have come out with the first ever indigenous antibiotic. And all this is happening in the collaboration with the private sector. The first ever antibiotic called nephithromycin, because earlier on, beginning from penicillin, which was known as the queen of drugs, came somewhere in 1948 or so, and right down to the first generation antituberculosis, second generation chlorophenicol, so and so on. The trials were done outside, only the manufacturing was done here by the pharma companies, spread across Gujarat, Maharashtra, etc. So this is one antibiotic. We did the trials in our institute in Faridabad, and then WOCAR took it over. Has been found to be efficacious or effective in, particularly in resistant lung infections or resistant respiratory infections in patients, for example, having immunocompromised status like in malignancy or poorly controlled diabetes, etc. And we have we have also come out with the first ever gene therapy successful trial in hemophilia, which all of you know is bleeding, clotting disorder resulting from the deficiency of factor VIII. So we have succeeded in developing factor VIII, and of course, after the clearance of the ethics committees, etc., we've done a successful trial on a number of subjects in Christian Medical College, Vellore, and during the course of trial, there was not a single bleeding episode. That is why this trial found publication in New England Journal of Medicine, which I know. Okay, that means you read journals, because in the common parlance they would know. So New England Journal is one of the oldest journals in medicine across the world. I mean, in the times when the Britishers ruled the medicine, after 1960s, they moved over to USA. Earlier on, it is the Britain which was ruling the entire science spectrum, including the medicine. And that time, the New England Journal and the British Medical Journal were the premier journals. So publication in a journal of that repute is itself a validation. Then you don't require any validation. So I think this is a huge, huge breakthrough which India has come through in a disease which actually originated from UK. The old timers of my generation who had read British books like Boyd's, who recall, it was mentioned as Queen's disease, because the first case was detected in Queen Victoria's family, her cousin or some extended family. So today we have come out with the first ever gene therapy. So we are now also offering solutions which will be applicable tomorrow, instead of following others, which was happening. And I vividly remember in the 1970s and 80s, Houston became a very household name in the media circles in India, because any VIP getting a heart attack or needing to have a heart bypass would go to Houston. It's no longer so. Today we are providing it. One of our other institutes, which also I am looking after, the Trivandrum Sri Chitra Institute, has now become world famous for exporting cost-effective valves, medical devices, biodegradable implants, etc. So I think we have now come a long way, and therefore this is one of the better times happening for you. And the secret of all this is that we have not observed any inhibitions or reservations in having a larger integration with the private sector. So why I'm saying so is that the UCMS, being also now half a century old, could become partner in conducting some of these trials and also associate the private sector instead of remaining confined to yourself. Because the age of silos is over, and if you continue to be in silos, you will not grow further than this. We have very extensive, we have for the first time set up a medical radioisotope plant in Vizag, which is again a department of atomic energy associated with me. Earlier on, we had all this chromia, etc., isotopes coming from outside for the treatment in various chemotherapies. So I think we are now very much into a very different kind of a mode. And for you medicos, and I think for the medical college management also, it's important for you to open up to these new vistas and new options rather than carrying on with the traditional methods, because the others are moving very fast. And also because the challenge now for a medical professional of today is, broadly speaking, threefold. I'm sorry, I should have spoken for 2 minutes as a chief guest, because chief guest is supposed to light a lamp and then say, very good, and check out because, but fortunately, unfortunately, having been a teacher for more than quarter of a century, so the habit doesn't go easily. Though the challenge now is to explain in simple words for these medicos is, for example, when we were undergraduates, we were told if you read syphilis, you read medicine. Because the primary would be chancre, secondary would be skin, tertiary would go to brain, neurosyphilis, cardiosyphilis, etc., so you cover. By the time we became postgraduates, the dictum was if you read diabetes, you read medicine. Because you will have nephropathy, you'll have neuropathy, your retina, all the systems would get. And now, it's such a wide thing, it's both now. Particularly after COVID, because somewhere in 1980s, they said that the communicable diseases have been overcome, now you have only non-communicable. But then suddenly AIDS and COVID, etc. happened. And that time I remember one of our colleagues wrote a lighter piece in JAPI that now India has stepped into an age of civilized diseases. We no longer die of leprosy or tuberculosis, we die of a heart attack. But today we have both. So we have communicable diseases, that's why we are into TB, Mukt Bharat, etc., etc. We are into dengue vaccine. Again, dengue and malaria vaccine is again being tried by our Department of Biotechnology in the Translational Medical Science Institute over here. And at the same time, we are also beset with all the metabolic disorders, the so-called non-communicable. So the spectrum has become biphasic. And similarly, the lifespan also biphasic. Because on the one hand, you have more than 70% of population below the age of 40. On the other hand, the absolute number of plus 60s also increased. While in 1947, I think the lifespan was hardly 50, 55, and has gone up to 65, 70, and still progressively going up. So now the challenge is to deal with the care of the geriatric age group, both preventive as well as those diseases which never happened earlier because people didn't live long enough. So all those malignancies of old age. And at the same time, prevention of the later disease earlier in the younger age. Prevention of type 2 in the young, diabetes in the young, prevention of coronary heart disease in the young. Because we are talking of Viksit Bharat, all of us, but have we realized that it's equally important for us to preserve the energy to create that Viksit Bharat. So we can't allow them to drain out. So this become a biphasic disease spectrum, biphasic lifespan, and upon that the technology explosion. There's so much of it then with the physics coming in, the artificial intelligence, machine learning. And therefore, if today one was to tell a medico what to read, like I said, once upon a time, if you read syphilis, the other it became if you read diabetes. I think today is if you read AI, so AI will tell you what it is, because it's become such a large, huge explosion of information. But to use that also you need, and I am among the first who have actually practiced artificial intelligence in medicine. And in fact, I was the first member of parliament who's running for many years now a tele-mobile clinic where you have a physical doctor, you have an AI doctor, and then you connect it with some of the corporate hospitals. So the entire cycle, which is completed 40, 50 minutes, would in a corporate hospital cost about 25,000, and also, but we are doing it out of philanthropy. So there, the physical doctor, of course, talks to the patient, and then the AI doctor from the screen talks in the language that the patient talks. So if you talk in Punjabi, she speaks Punjabi. If you talk in Telugu, she speaks. So we have created our own language model. And I realize we are running it in some of the most remotest villages, and I realize that many of our patients get cured just by talking to the AI doctor. It was such a placebo effect, They find their own language being spoken in the dialect, which even though the villagers have forgotten to talk about. So many fascinating things happen, but that I call it as a hybrid model, because if you leave it alone, then the personalized touch gets a little waned away. So I think this is one of the better times happening, and the opportunity for you is also to contribute to the making of 2047 India, which all of us keep talking about. And it is just destiny has granted you. So those who collect your degrees today are going to be at the prime of your practice and your medical career when 2047 arrives. So that is a privilege which I didn't get, and you got. And it's not of your, credit doesn't go to you, nor even to your parents, because it was decided by the destiny that you were to be born today. But then that is an opportunity for you. And I think if you realize that, you have much, much more heights to achieve and much, much more options to actually realize your dreams and your ambitions. So all the best once again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. The motto, placing oneself in the place of the patient, really gives the humane view for healing beyond treating.